Hello, everyone. It's really lovely to share with you this work that we did last year, and it was published at CACW. I am really happy to have done this work with my awesome collaborators, Naveena, Chinasa, Catherine, and Krzysztof. I would very much love this to be more of a dialogue than a presentation. I do have some slides for about maybe 20 minutes of content, but please feel free to stop me at any time and ask any clarifying questions, and we can just have a dialogue, especially with an interview group like this. And I'd love to hear more about kind of your backgrounds and where you're coming from, your positionality, and yeah, what you've been thinking about in this space. So I'll try to see if my slides work. Yes, it does. As we know, AI is increasingly applied for social good problems. Companies and research labs are seeking to harness the potential of these technology for domains like climate change and humanitarian aid. For example, Microsoft's AI4SG program is a multi-million-dollar investment in projects and organizations in areas like agriculture. And before my PhD program, I also had some personal experiences building machine learning models for water pollution in partnership with the EPA. And overall, there is an upward trend in AI for social good initiatives, according to a 2020 survey. And often, AI for social good partnerships emphasize these partnerships, or social good initiative emphasize these partnerships with community organizations as an approach to build and implement AI solutions. And they're grounded in this assumption that community organizations will benefit from AI technologies. But do these projects actually benefit community organizations and communities at large? That's an open question that I thought that I actually did not really have an answer to when I was a practitioner. There's various commentaries and studies on AI for social good initiatives that actually highlight the problems, specifically with big tech companies' AI for good efforts and how they're actually extractive in nature. My own work with the EPA has also helped me realize that many problems with algorithmic decision-making, while our model was high-performing, it did not really get implemented on the ground due to issues like distributive impact. And HCI literature has studied the characteristics of community organizations, highlighting their resource constraints and reliance on external expertise when it comes to technology development. And adoptions of data-driven technologies could also influence their autonomy. AI specifically, due to its recency and issues with transparency, often occupies this authority status that remains unchallenged in a lot of fieldwork. And there are also many challenges in collaborations with power asymmetries and de-skilling of frontline workers' domain expertise, and barriers that are faced by AI developers in user engagement, like just really short timeline for projects. And our study asks, what are the goals, expectations, and aspirations of the community organizations in AI for social good? And their voices have not been foregrounded in the past. Often the narratives of AI for social good are formed by the technology teams or the large funders that are putting so much money in these type of initiatives. And my kind of personal positionality here is to kind of coming in as a really idealistic computer science student, really wanting to understand the impact of my work and whether the people that we claim to say that we are trying to benefit actually benefit from these projects. And we investigated these questions through conversations or 16 semi-structured interviews with staff of community organizations who participated or were participating in these type of initiatives. They come from a very diverse background, and we also cover a wide range of projects. While many of them are involved in multiple projects, we focus on one project in the interview to get in-depth analysis or insights. For example, one participant works for a government agency, and the project aimed to build a machine learning model for prioritizing citizen complaints in the environmental space. And the project is a 3-month summer program. And another project that I really like is this participant who works for an environmental nonprofit, and the project seeks to build a computer vision model for automating bee dancing pattern identification, which is really cool. Bee dancing have or communicates through dancing, and there's a lot of information that we're still trying to learn from it. And this is a 1-year funded project by corporate grant. So there are many ways of funding and many different types of technology teams that these organizations work with. And in this work, we also use the data feminism lens. I'm really inspired by the data feminism lens, not just because of the provide or challenges existing power dynamics in data science that's not been discussed much prior to this framework, but also it just provides a deeper understanding of my own personal positionality in the space. And Catherine is someone that I admire a lot, and just learning from someone that that I admire a lot so closely is just a joy. And so data feminism contends with power imbalances in data science and proposes 7 principles. The first principle, examine power, is to analyze power relations among the AI for social good stakeholders. And we also uncovered contributions and labor of community organizations to embrace the pluralism of knowledge provided by these teams and make community organizations' labor and knowledge visible. And we also investigated the actual outcomes of AI for social good projects, which centers the perspectives, the context, and the aspirations of community organizations. And lastly, we advocate using data collaboration as a guiding principle moving forward for AI for social good to challenge existing power imbalances, which I'll go more into after I share more of the results. So our study foreground the perspectives of community organizations whose voices are often not as prominent as the voices of these larger corporations and technology teams. In doing so, we reveal their connections to local communities and beneficiaries, the technology teams that they work with, and also funders. Specifically, funders have a very pervasive influence on the partnership in terms of how it's formed, the prioritizations of problems, and what solutions gets explored. And often AI for social good have a really short funding cycles, assuming that a lot of these projects are kind of try quickly and then fail quickly and or deploy quickly. Community organizations themselves often relied on a lot of these external funding and are also pressured to adopt innovative solutions like AI. And often that's what funding is available, is when innovative solutions are deployed. Community organizations also provide critical contributions, including data, community access, and contextual knowledge to the project, but often their goals are sidelined in these partnerships. They represent the needs of local communities, and they also work with the communities to implement and evaluate these tools. And for the technology teams that often work on AI for social good, they have to prioritize their own incentives, which are often research publications or technology development of its own or a product deployment. And also around epistemic justice, technology expertise is more privileged than the knowledge that community organizations are able to bring in these partnerships. So this is kind of an overview of our findings, but I'll focus on kind of 2 aspects of our findings in this presentation to dive a little bit deeper. And I think it's also opportunity for future work that could build on these perspectives. And funders specifically have a really heavy influence on partnership formation and how things are done. As participant 6 mentioned, there's this pervasive incentive responding to the donor. There might be someone at the foundation who loves the idea of this platform and really wants to see it built. And we end up building this platform for the funder with all the things the funder wants to see in it. And they also later explain that even they know on the ground that this platform is not going to be helpful for the organization or the end beneficiaries. They still have to build it. And often you just end up with products that are not really impactful in real life. And P14 also expressed that funders often have a focus on AI that determines their project priorities, and that AI comes first before the problems that they're trying to face. Stating that often I think the most important thing is to have AI in the title. And in this case, they actually have a 400-something pages of report on AI that are not really currently used by any of the people in the organization. And then holding on to the community organizations feedback, maybe I'll just pause here for a little bit. I've been going on for a while. Are there any kind of burning questions or comments that you have, given what I have already shared?
Did any of the organizations that you interviewed build their own systems? Or work with maybe, let's say, not like Microsoft or Earth type big AI partners, but maybe smaller, more local developers?
So these organizations work with various types of technology teams. There's the research lab, but the emphasis is still very much on the algorithmic development than the actual context itself. There are also different types of programs, like fellowship programs, that last for a summer. And these teams are often consisted of recent graduates of data science, or some of them do a really good job in bringing multidisciplinary teams together. So some of them might be from computer science and some of them might be from anthropology. And yeah, so a very different wide range of technology teams. Does that answer your question? Yeah. All right. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll keep going. Yeah, so honing on the specific community organizations, knowledge and labor, and also just what their goals are with these projects, and if they're actually getting something out of it. That's kind of what I really want to highlight. So many community organizations do expect the projects to result in some sort of system deployments and eventually reduction to their manual workload. That's why they engage with this type of project. I saw Stephen raise your hand. Do you want to ask your question now?
Yeah, I just realized, could you give some examples? I know you had anonymous interviews of the community organizations that you worked with. I think.
Yeah, so there are smaller nonprofits, but there are also bigger international organizations, like within the UN system. There are also maybe a research lab of its own, but then it's more of a nonprofit status and focusing on a specific topic like ecology. So they're very wide range of organizations also.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So most of the organizations do want, to see some sort of real impact on their work, and often they want to use AI because it has promises to help streamline their data work and help give them insights about something that they can't do manually. For example, P12 said they expected at least some sort of minimal product and that the team would actually build something, like otherwise what is the point of these type of engagement? But there are, of course, other goals too, including learning and stuff. And then I'll get to that shortly. And the contributions of community organizations are really, really crucial in this type of partnerships. They not only contribute necessary conditions like data and also access to the local communities for evaluation and also deployment, but they also provide a lot of intellectual contributions. Besides domain expertise, some of our participants also have technical experiences and help with model evaluation, which is often assumed not the case because you kind of assume that the technology teams bringing the technical perspectives and then the community organization bringing domain expertise. But actually sometimes the community organizations themselves have a good understanding of what's going on. For example, this participant P4 mentioned that they would always point out how the training was doing because the first time the team brought really good matrix and there was really like could be kind of a overfitting scenario and they were trying to point out and for the evaluation, especially for teams that are just really recent graduates from data science programs or stuff like that. They actually still need a lot of training or a lack of understanding of real world machine learning projects. So our community organizations also provide a lot of that expertise. However, with the goal of deployment, only 2 out of the 14 projects that we investigated actually resulted in any real world deployment. And projects often didn't have the immediate benefits to the end beneficiaries as they wish. And that project, in general, project duration was just too short to solve any real complex social problems, which are often wicked problems that are not possible to have one single solution or even solutions at all. And it just needs a lot of systematic iterations of just tackling from all different aspects, and technology just not the only aspect or entry point. But what I found really interesting is that community organizations still view these diminished goals as valuable, highlighting that the exploratory aspect of these projects and also just the benefits of learning itself. Often they come with the idea that, yeah, we're just kind of trying to explore this. If it works, then it will be really great. But if not, it's okay to just learn through the process. I think there's a lot of understanding of the fact that AI is still very much a evolving technology that we're trying to understand. For example, P6 mentioned that even though at certain point of that project, they really had thought that they would have finished working on something or having a working platform, but even that didn't happen. They just mentioned that, or just understand that things take longer than expected, but you always learn something along the way. And to avoid these suboptimal project outcomes, our participants also share their aspirations for future projects. They often highlight a relationship-first approach, asking technology teams to come to them first and to make decisions together in early stages of the project. And I just love this quote so much, and I use this for the title of the paper. So P7 said, "Our dream is that before research institute decides to do something, they come to us first and ask, what do you need? Rather than, oh, I need to use this tool, so I need to work with you. The primary goal should be to build relationship and work with us instead of to impose a technology or develop the technology itself." P10 also highlight that it is unethical to impose technologies onto marginalized communities, especially when AI for social good is trying to work on social problems that impact a lot of marginalized communities like refugees. So P10 said, "What I hate the most, and I've been working here for 8 years, is when a company comes and says, we would love to apply a product into refugees. And I was like, they're not guinea pigs, they're human beings with dignity. It's unethical, you know, imposing a product or service or technology. They're not allowed for experimentation. This is a really powerful quote that I often highlight when I talk about this project, because I think that if we really see human beings in these social problems, we might just take a very different approach in technology. So before I get into kind of a discussion, are there any questions about the findings that and kind of the process that that we have done the research on?
I guess not so much a question, but just a reflection on, in terms of I really loved like this come to us first. It made me think of, I mean, it illustrates a very like predatory kind of way and a performativity that is very predatory in nature, which kind of links to the fact that, as one of your participants said, like these are people who've never solved real world issues. And when I think about computer scientists, you know, it's really like sitting in a lab with a computer, and often adjectives, which I don't want to kind of generalize or categorize, but, you know, people would say, oh, like it's a very kind of niche space for introverts, but it's not kind of an excuse for any sort of kind of invisibilizing or dehumanizing others, or not taking into consideration like the fact that you need to take the time to go and understand like the social context. So it's I often wonder if it's a lack of social skills, but at the same time, when it comes to like much higher level kind of decision making, why would someone, if I'm thinking in hierarchies, like in senior management, allow that in the first place?
Yeah, I often like to think that it's not an individual's responsibility. Often it's about the culture and the system that they work within, and the larger power structures that, you know, that influence them. But obviously, we all need to be self-reflective of our own responsibilities and our own agency and what we can do within that system. But what I found from just working in the space is that relationship building work is not valued in the same way that a quick research publication is valued, at least in a research institute. And I think there's a lot that we can do in building incentive structures so that these relationship building work is valued and is essential as part of this type of project. And I'll talk a little bit about that as kind of ongoing work, kind of follow-up work on top of this. But I think there's a lot that we can do in CS education too, to build up social skills. Absolutely.
Yeah, it made me think of a finding, Naveena and Hongjin, what you both said about the data scientists having to be able to have the skills to also work perhaps with other disciplines. Because if you want to do something for good, you need to understand what's good. And I think many computer scientists or data scientists are trained to do something technical or to then optimize for something rather than to really understand then what is good. So that skill is definitely undertrained. I think I've also seen that in some of my education. And what we found in one research we did is that perhaps we can then also not put that expectation that the data scientist needs to have all those skills, but they at least need to understand they are often, because my research was more like on, not necessarily for AI for social good, but any AI system that's, for example, by public sector, they do have the responsibility to understand that they don't have that skill and then to insist on collaboration. That is, I think that's because they got the power. They can also not say it's outside of my scope because they are the ones building, and so they are having a very much a power position in there. and I say they, but it can also be me, but just the data scientist.
Yeah.
And so they do have this responsibility then to assist on that collaboration, or to insist on, okay, are the people for whom this is going to be impactful, or for whom we're building it, in your case, are they involved?
Yeah.
So that could be a first step, and then
yeah. And I did got the chance to read kind of the first white paper by the group, Women at the Table, and I thought that is an excellent list of considerations for anyone who's working in the space to just start reflecting on their positionality in it and who they could learn from, and what kind of value tensions could evolve, like what are the conflicts of objectives here, and whose objectives are actually prioritized. That matter a lot to me because I've been in spaces where I felt like the technology teams or funders' objectives are prioritized over community organizations in real life, yet the claim and the narrative is about benefiting community organizations. That just doesn't really sit well. That discrepancy just is not accurate. And it bothered me a lot. And I think it bothers a lot of other people too, especially people who want to be in the space, who come with a lot of good intentions. But there's a lot that we can do to rethink this type of AI for social good. So maybe this is a good entry point into some of my discussion points. Yeah. Oh, Niha.
Oh, sorry. I don't. I was just gonna add that. Yeah, like a lot of what you've shared is really resonates with me. I don't specifically work with AI very often, but my background is working with a lot of nonprofits with data, and I know data for good has been around for a while. And so as someone like when I was studying like university, I was very much humanities focused, and I kind of fell into data science or just data analytics. And one of the things that I'm thankful for about that is that kind of like you mentioned, like you're working in this area of like wicked problems. It's very much a systems approach, and that like technology is part of the system, but it's not the only part of the system. And something that I still find really valuable is, and it depends on like what team you're on and et cetera, but like one of the benefits of like working with smaller teams is that when you actually get to talk to the like community, like doing a lot of that discovery work and getting to talk to people, and then kind of get close to asking like, why are we doing this? And because a lot of the times, like you were talking about, like just funder pressures, you'll see these RFPs. If you just like Google like a random RFP and you see like their specifications and how they're written, you're like, it just sounds like they're just cramming a bunch of like buzzwords and things like that. And you're like it feels very it's very like separated from what maybe the organization needs. And sometimes it'll just, like you said, like they're kind of doing it to check a box as opposed to how does this, and there's a lot of like fatigue or like technology fatigue because they have to adopt a new system or because it's being imposed on them. Something that is really common in like the social service space in Houston, or I guess maybe probably in general, is like having to kind of share the same data with so many different types of systems. And so I just went on a whole tangent, but I guess what I'm saying is like what you said really resonates. And so I feel like AI and algorithmic like fairness and all these things is just adds several layers of complexity for all these like things, like this kind of the power structure that's like just adopting technology or being like it's kind of being forced upon these organizations is something that they have to deal with. So that was just more of a reflection of just like what you've been sharing. So I feel very, very like seen by this presentation.
Oh, that means a lot. I thank you for sharing that resonance and reflection. I'm always would love to kind of hear more about kind of the specific of your collaborations and what came up from that and what you wish that should be there. But I think there's the need to rethink, how we develop technology for good. I very much wanted to think that it should be a social good with or without AI instead of AI for social good. It's in the name itself. It's AI that comes first. But I think kind of a takeaway from that after talking to these really wonderful participants is that the process of doing AI for social good matters as much as the technology itself and the problem itself. And that a lot of the findings from this study is not new in a lot of ways, because AI for social good is an extension of prior tech for good waves. You mentioned data for good. And before that, it's like laptop for good, or like TV for good. Like there are lots of that, especially in education. And there's new ways of technology come up. They always think, oh, this is going to transform our education system. But often, time and time over again, there are evidence that show you need human teachers to monitor this kind of technologies to make it really impactful for learning outcomes. And AI for social good need to learn from these decades of research in ICTD, but also HCI for development. And these emerging technologies could really amplify power imbalances due to its charisma and also public narratives about its potential without a lot of grounding, or lack of understanding of the infrastructure, the socio-technical system that governs AI development, and who's incentivized to advertise for this type of technologies. And so I think data feminism is a really powerful framework that could guide us in this kind of moving forward of reflection and implementing some of these reflections. Data collaboration, first of all, embraces pluralism of knowledge, acknowledging that community organizations come with their lived experiences and domain expertise that are as valuable as the technology expertise from these research teams or industry labs. And that leadership of communities is valuable, and they should be viewed as co-designers from early stages of problem identification and solution testing and such. And the importance of sharing agency and power, either through funding or leadership position roles. And the more important thing is that it should start from building relationships among people who are gathered, by a common goal of addressing some form of problems in a social domain. And so in the paper, we highlight some recommendations for AI for social good stakeholders, and I'll just highlight a few of them. I focus on funders a lot because they do have a pervasive influence on the formation of the partnership. And funding could really support problem-oriented projects instead of technology-oriented projects, and to really support community leaderships from early on. Technology teams could also engage with existing participatory design and community-based research principles and tools. The white paper that AI for and equity could be a list of questions, reflection questions that technology teams could engage with. And there are also things like technology tarot cards and envisioning community cards that HCI researchers have put forward. And these are tools that are just not reaching, or maybe just not effective enough in the space. And for future research, I think there's a need to really study up. This is a concept for anthropology. I don't have to explain too much here in this circle. I really like the idea of really focusing on what people empowering should do and need to do, and why, like, how do they make certain decisions. So as a follow-up work, we are actually analyzing these NFPs. So Neha, you mentioned the funding kind of call for proposals. So we analyze a bunch of funding documents of AI for social good to identify those priorities and also the approaches that they promote. And I'm really happy to share some preliminary insights from that work if people are curious. But I think there's a need to kind of build bridges. Like there's so many AI stakeholders here. How can researchers or academic as a connecting point that could help connect these different values and sometimes conflicting objectives, and how do we work together better and co-design maybe a funding call or co-design a project that actually put communities' need forward from the very beginning. There are also obviously challenges to implement principles of data collaboration. So I think there's also need to just better understand what are some difficulties on the ground and how do we better address them.